All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It has been quite the morning already. And although I'm not going to get into the story of it, let me just simply say there is no rest. At times, we are in one of those seasons, but that's okay because the busier things get, undoubtedly, that means the better they are in many ways and the crazier they are. And so we are in a crazy time, and we're going to talk about all of that. Now, we are going to talk about Jerusalem and some of the problems that Jerusalem is facing. And actually, quite specifically, we're not even going to get around to talking about the problems that Jerusalem is facing per se. We're going to talk about how those problems are affecting the rest of the world. And I'm going to get into some scripture related to this because we have to stand on the authority of God's word before we start making claims about how Israel begins to affect the rest of the world. And we're going to have that conversation. I'm going to catch you up on some details on U.S. assets in not just the Persian Gulf, but in the Red Sea. And I got an update from our friend Mike Digman, and I'll fill you guys in on that. He gave us an email, sent me an email that was very useful. Helps me go back and correct the record a little bit on something that I said on a live show that was on Tuesday with David, and not really correcting the record, but expounding on what was actually said. And Michael, I know you're watching. Thank you for that information. I'm excited about guys like him because they're on a team right now that's doing research for us, which I think is really, really important, especially in the time and the day that we're in. And of course, that's going to be an exciting update for us as we start getting into the effects of all this. We are going to get into an update worldwide. We're going to talk about things that are happening with respect to Russian sanctions. New Russian sanctions, ladies and gentlemen, as though the old Russian sanctions were not damaging enough to the United States of America. We are about to deploy new Russian sanctions. And so we're also going to talk about the current regime in office that is looking to set rules into play that will, in essence, cripple the next administration if the next administration happens to be the former president of the United States. If it is not the former president of the United States and it ends up being
Big Mike,
well, then, of course, it's going to make Big Mike's career a lot easier in helping to finalize the destruction of this country. And we're going to get into that. We are also going to talk about Nikki Haley for a minute because Nikki Haley is contributing to the problems that we are seeing, not just in this country, but is also not helping Israel one bit. And I'll talk to you why that's the case. And it does relate to Israel. All of it relates to Israel. A lot of it relates to Israel. And we are going to get into this. By the way, the Biden regime is already beginning to put lawyers by the thousands in key areas to start contesting the results of elections. State election lawsuits. No joke. So we'll see what happens with that. There's a lot of stuff that are going on, and then there are all kinds of demonstrations, as they would call them. They really are disorderly, insane, bloody riots that are being planned nationwide. We'll get into that. By the way, a couple of things to be paying attention to, right? The Philippines is in a mess right now with China. That's going to become a significant issue to be looking at. There is a international posturing right now on a very specific move for a ceasefire in Israel, even though they don't know what that looks like, and nobody is willing to have a conversation about what that looks like. This is an interesting one. Maduro is actually saying, yes, that's Venezuela, that they are looking at joining BRICS. And by the way, make no mistake about it, they likely will, and they will be strengthened as a result of it because of the actions of the current administration or the current regime in office. And India is about to create a massive problem a massive problem, not only for the bordering Pakistanis, but they are going to create a massive problem for China, which is going to translate into some forced action going into Taiwan. And we have a lot to talk about when it comes to all of that, because all of this stuff deals with the type of disruption that we've been saying will happen, all while one major variable gets overlooked by a lot of people, and that is the fact that God is on the throne. And so that's the exciting part about all of this, is to understand that the Lord is in control. He knows exactly what he's doing, and we've got nothing to worry about because God is at the center of it. Now, before we get started on any of this, I do just want to jump in and thank you guys that have been supporting us on Instagram, on Facebook. By the way, Instagram, we're probably going to be ditching Instagram soon. We'll keep our presence there, but we may actually end up putting a bid into X and get ourselves on there a little bit, because Instagram has effectively told me, they made this clear to me. They said, stop the content that you're doing and your channel will grow. If you keep doing the content that you're doing, your channel will actually die. And it's been dropping just as they promised. So this is a very interesting thing to see it like this. But sure enough, that's kind of what we should be expecting, because we know what we're dealing with when it comes to these people, and we kind of understand where they stand with things, when they're going to catch on that this is bad for their business. I don't know, folks, but eventually it will catch on when things go under and the political arena begins to change with respect to that. Brad Brunn, you are the first one to support us today in the super chat. You say, earlier this week, Secretary of State Blinken gave his take on the Middle East. Spoiler alert, it was accurate as General Miley's on Afghanistan. Oh, gosh. Oh, this is funny. That's funny. Hank Hanegraaff's on Israel and Joel Osteen's on persecution. Some of you might not remember the Hank Hanegraaff take, but yeah, I think you're dead right, bro. That is awesome. Awesome. All right. I want to set the record straight. Actually, there was nothing to set straight. I'm going to add to the record, because we had a discussion on assets, United States assets in the Red Sea. And I had made some comments as into where I believe some of those assets could be. And I think Michael, in a very eloquent letter that he wrote to me, sort of already confirms it. If you don't know who Michael is, Michael's a dear brother, Michael Digman. He's in our chat. He's a part of our team. And he is a retired lieutenant commander from the United States Naval Supply Corps, actually. That's where he was. It's the United States Navy, but he was assigned to the Supply Corps, which, by the way, is no joke. There's a lot of work that he does there, or that he did there. Very useful guy to our nation, useful guy to the kingdom. Anyway, Michael writes this letter to us, and I'm just going to read it because I think the way he writes it is perfect. And I think that what he says here is very, very helpful to us as we discussed what was going on in the Red Sea. So let me read this to you, and then we'll get into the business of the day and the week as we jump in and have a conversation with respect to how everything that happens in Jerusalem directly relates to what we're seeing here day in and day out. By the way, I just saw another live chat come through. TX Shenanigans, you say, Pastor James, I sent a super chat in August last year asking prayers for how life was going for me. You told me the Lord had better things planned for me. You were absolutely right. Thank you. Praise be to the Lord. Amen to that. What a celebration to hear that somebody, God is good. That's all I have to say. It's just awesome. God is good. And I love making predictions like that. And I actually love saying that I was right and God is right. Yes, I did say corpse. Forgive me. You speak multiple languages, and then what happens is when you're tired, it all becomes mush to you. So, all right, let's jump into this. This is Michael's letter to us, and Michael says this. He gives me an update. He says, Brad, I think Michael missed the broadcast where I had referred to him. We were talking about the Gulf of Aden and my concern with whether or not any assets could get into there. And so, in essence, I basically referred to Michael because I knew Michael would know, because that's part of the world that he kind of owns in terms of he has a really good understanding as into how the assets get deployed out there, especially on the Navy side. And so I had just assumed that he would have a better idea. And of course, he does. And he gave us a really good answer as into what's going on. By the way, Castellodina, thank you so much. You are awesome. Castellodina is what I think you're supposed to say, not Castellodina. It's been a long week, you guys. Anyway, thank you so much. You're awesome. You say to one of my favorite pastors, love you. You are so awesome. Thank you for your support on Rumble. Let me read this to you. Michael gave us a good answer. I think he had missed it because he just said he had to drop off early. So by the time I brought it up, he was already out of the brief. Okay, so this is what he says. He says, Brad contacted me about your question about the Gulf of Aden. He says, I'm attaching a link to the United States Naval Ship Tracker, which is really cool. I didn't even know that something like that existed, and that's a great link. Anyway, he says this. He says, as you can see, there is a carrier in the Red Sea and an ARG in the Mediterranean. The ARG has Harriers on board, the LHD, and the carrier has F-18 or F-18As. The Navy doesn't have any F-35s yet. Actually, I'm not even allowed to talk about this. Actually, I'm not allowed to talk about it. So I just have to say I agree. Yeah, okay, I can't even talk about it. That's right, because I was in. Okay, I almost just messed up. All right, so he says there are several carriers at sea, but I don't know if they're doing exercises or in the process of deploying. So, Michael, this is really true. I don't know either. Some of this is very, very, some of it looks very unusual for exercises, although it wouldn't shock me if that was the case, only because the United States has decided to conduct exercises in areas around that region, which is very unusual because the commencement of exercises in that area would oftentimes signal some type of preemptive military positioning, which the United States has always been very conscious about trying to project. So this is kind of interesting to see that we're sort of on a path here where that's happening, and it sort of, I don't know, I don't know, it's very interesting. Okay, so he goes on to say, as for the Gulf of Aden, it is very constrained, and a carrier doesn't turn on a dime, and very much so, I would agree with that. They would want more space to engage targets and be able to maneuver, and allow the screening vessels to be able to fire. A carrier draws about 37 to 38 feet, so that is a deep draft vessel. The only thing deeper that I've been on is an Ohio class with its tanks blown dry, drawing over 40 feet. And the Florida transited, there are a few, wait. And the Florida, oh, okay, yeah. And the Florida transited there a few months ago. Okay, so this is interesting. Michael, if you're online, and I think you are, what's the conclusion with respect to that? Does that mean that we're limited as into how many carriers are going to allow in the Red Sea? And this is kind of a selfish question for me, right? My guess is you're never going to have a full carrier group lodged in the actual Dead Sea, at least not in proximity to one another. Maybe they'll deploy north and south of the carrier itself if there are any destroyers that accompany it. Tell me, educate me on this. And maybe this is something you can send me a separate email on, or maybe you can just in the chat update me on this if you're there, because there's a conclusion that I think I can safely draw based on the answer that you give me. So I'm kind of curious to know that, and I'll kind of keep an eye on the chat for your answer, because I think you're still in it. I'm almost certain that's the case. I said Dead Sea. Thank you. I keep saying Dead Sea. I mean to say Red Sea. I don't know why I keep saying Dead Sea. Yeah, you know. tired. What do you expect? Okay, oh, here he goes. He goes, it would probably limit it to 1, but the CVNs have quite a bit of range, but it's constrained. Okay, great. You gave me the information that I needed. That's what I needed to read. Okay, so that's going to be very useful for me in a conversation that I'm going to have a little bit later today, actually in a recording that I'm going to make. So that's useful information. I'm being a little bit selfish with it, but why not, right? That's good info. All right, let's start with a passage, and what we're going to do is we are going to float over to the book of Zechariah. Now, I have read from Zechariah before, on multiple occasions, especially from this particular passage, but I think it's useful because we need to understand it, and then we're going to float back to the book of Genesis because they're both very relevant to the conversation that we are going to have, because when I read this article to you or give you information from this article, it's going to kind of make you sick. So let's read this. Now, this is chapter 12 of Zechariah, and it says this starting in verse 1. It says, the burden of the word of the Lord against Israel, thus says the Lord, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup, notice this, of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall happen in that day, I will make Jerusalem, notice this, a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it in that day, says the Lord. Notice this, I will strike every horse with confusion and its rider with madness. I will open my eyes on the house of Judah, and I will strike every horse of the peoples with blindness. It's a pretty heavy statement. Look what he goes on to say. This gets heavier. Verse 5, and the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength in the Lord of hosts, their God. In that day, I will make the governors of Judah like a firepan in the woodpile, and like a fiery torch in the sheaves. They shall devour all the surrounding peoples on the right hand and on the left, but Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, Jerusalem. Look what it goes on to say in verse 7. The Lord will save the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of the house of David and glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall not become greater than that of Judah. In that day the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The one who is feeble among them in that day shall be like David, and a huge house of David shall be like God, like the angel of the Lord before them. It shall be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Let me read that last part. It shall be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And folks, they are coming against Jerusalem in ways that we have not seen in a long time. Antisemitism is showing its ugly face in ways that we have not seen virtually ever. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be bold enough as in to say that the ugly face of anti-Semitism is even more ugly than what we saw in pre-World War II. I am not joking, folks. It has gotten that ugly. It is getting that much darker. It is getting that much more wicked. And folks, I want you to understand something. As the darkness continues to darken, and as these things continue to manifest, we are going to watch the hand of God prove his word to be true, and he is going to prevail. But the nations that curse Israel, they themselves will be cursed. And I want to say this because there's a direct parallel between how the United States of America is treating Israel and how it's faring. I think one of the first issues, before we focus on any of the domestic policies that have destroyed the United States of America that we should focus on, one of the very first things that the current president of the United States did was made life a lot harder on Jews. And he was very aggressive about how he did that, whether it be declaring the Yemeni Houthis as being non-combatant, non-terrorists, whether it, in essence, recognizing the legitimacy of an organization like Hamas, whose whole heart is to destroy Jewish lives, which we know. It doesn't matter what you want to look at, whatever you focus on, understand that the United States of America is in a place of judgment because how it has treated Israel. Make no mistake about it, we have done so much to hurt the nation of Israel, and we are paying a massive price for it. We are paying a massive price for it. Folks, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the Biden regime has continued to put people on a pedestal and lift up people who absolutely hate Israel. I featured a video of a woman. She identifies herself as trans. She has an organization called Woke Kindergarten that actually is funded by our tax dollars and by people like Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden might not have a direct relationship to this woman specifically, but Joe Biden continues, and I want you to understand this. Joe Biden continues to encourage people like this to do the evil that they do. I'm not kidding when I tell you this. This is not an exaggeration. This is not a joke. This is not me playing games. There's nothing like this happening. I am literally as serious could be. And I want you to get this because it's critical. Okay? Women like this, people like this are encouraged in this administration. Okay? This is scary. When you think about it to its ultimate level, this is actually a very, very scary fact. Okay? Watch this woman. Because as you watch her, there is nothing about this, absolutely nothing about this that is healthy on any level. Nothing about this that's healthy on any level. Let me show this to you. Watch what this person says. And I can tell you this right now. She doesn't even know what she's talking about. Okay? And I'm going to talk about this in just a second. But watch what she says, because this is going to prove a very hefty point here. Watch this.
Yes, everyone, the rumors are true. I am anti-Israel. I am pro-Palestine. And I am 100% 10 toes down anti-Israel. I believe Israel has no right to exist. I believe the United States has no right to exist. I believe every settler colony who has committed genocide against native peoples, against indigenous people, has no right to exist.
I'm willing to bet she can't even identify several of the terms that she actually used. I don't even know if she can identify what indigenous actually means, because if she would or was able to, then she is intellectually dishonest. But I think she has to rise to a level of being able to understand what she's saying in order to be intellectually dishonest. I don't think that that's the case. This is a woman, I want everybody to understand this, who has been completely blinded by the devil. Why? The devil wants her life to be cursed. The devil actually hates her. So the fastest way he can get this woman to experience every bit of judgment due to her is by getting her to hate Israel. He can fast track her destruction by getting her to hate Israel. And we'll talk about this in a minute, because I'm going to talk about some things that I ran into when I was in Israel recently that I continue to run into every time I go to Israel. And I'm going to explain my point. But let me play this again, since I did cut her off. Let me play a part of this again. Okay? Let's watch. By the way, I will say this. She doesn't believe that the United States should even exist, yet she experiences every benefit of the United States. It is the imperialistic, anti-indigenous, hyper-colonialist xenophobist, whatever it is that she wants to label the United States of America, it's that infrastructure that pays her salary. It's that infrastructure that gives her the medical care that she receives. It's that infrastructure that pays for her organization to actually go on. It's the United States of America that feeds the monster that she is becoming. I want everybody to recognize that. So it's interesting how she'll curse the United States of America, but you'll never see her go back to Africa. You'll never see her go to the Middle East. You will never see her protest in downtown Gaza. And for those of you that might not notice, what she's wearing around her neck is something that is uniquely and distinctly Palestinian. And if she was in downtown Gaza wearing that, walking down the street, she would not live. Everybody needs to understand that. I don't think she understands that. She has no clue. Zero. She does not know. So listen to what she has to say.
Israel has no right to exist. I believe the United States has no right to exist. I believe every settler colony who has committed genocide against native peoples, against indigenous people, has no right to exist. I believe in a free Palestine, from the river to the sea. I believe one day Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea, I believe one day Palestine will be free. I would bet you my life on the fact that she has no idea what the river is she's talking about or what the sea she's referring to is. She has no idea that she says earlier that she does not stand for any genocidal nation that exists, yet she's calling for genocide. She's literally calling for genocide. And by the way, if the Israelis are genocidal, if they are people who are guilty of committing genocide, well, then I would argue that the Israelis are the worst genocidiacs, for lack of a better term, as some people have. That's not even a word. I don't even know why people are even using that. I just heard that for the first time, 3 weeks ago. But they are the worst at genocide in the world. If they are considered people who are guilty of genocide, they've done a terrible job at it. And I can give you a piece of advice. Don't ever go to Israel to learn how to commit genocide, because you will actually do the opposite. Why? Well, let's let the data speak, shall we? Just since Gaza was taken over by Hamas and Israel left, they walked away, 1.1 million new Palestinians came into that city, whether it be through birth or whether it be through them moving over there. 1.1 million. That means when we started in the area of Gaza in 1948 with 100,000 Arabs, now there are over 2 million. To be specific, there's close to 2.4 million. So if Israel is guilty of committing genocide, then I can just tell you this right now, Israel is terrible at it. Do not go to Israel as an example. As a matter of fact, there was believed to be close to 200,000 Arabs that were living in all of Israel when Israel became a state. When the Jews moved in and took swampland and turned it into one of the most beautiful and flourishing areas in the world. The Jews come in, and 1948, there were maybe 250,000 to 300,000 Arabs. Now, there are easily 6 million. So Israel is terrible at genocide. They need to go to genocide school. Because quite frankly, they're terrible at it. As a matter of fact, they're even terrible at protecting themselves from genocide. Because when you start looking at the numbers and you really begin to examine what that actually looks like, it will make you sick to understand what really happened there. Because when you start looking at the numbers of what happened in Israel and the amount of Arabs that were in the land, everything changes. Should I go over some of those numbers? Let me just do that, because I think it's really important before I play the rest of her. In 1948, I'm not even going to get to the current day. I'm just going to go from 1948 to 2018. From 1948 to 2018. In 1948, in Algeria, there were 140,000 Jews. In 1958, there were 130,000. In 1968, you ready for this? This is not an exaggeration. There were 1,500. So in a 20-year period, it went from 140,000 to 1,500. In a 30-year period, it went to 1,000 from 140,000. By the time you get to the current day, 2018, there were less than 50. In the current day, they believe there are 2 in Algeria. How about Egypt? This one is shocking, and I'm being sarcastic when I say that. There were 75,000 Jews in Egypt in 1948. 75,000, which is extraordinary. Mostly in the Sinai, but still, it's an extraordinary number. 75,000 Jews in Israel in 1948. In 2018, there were 100. Right now, the only Jews that they believe that are in Egypt, the only Jews that are in Egypt right now are believed to be the diplomatic corps and some of their family members. So that number is probably 20 or 30. In Iraq, 135,000 Jews in 1948. In the present day, they believe the number is 2 to 5. In Lebanon, 5,000 in 1948. 5,000 Jews, mostly to the south. This is interesting. By 1958, there were 6,000, so the number increased. 1968, it went from 6,000 to 3,000, and by the time we got to 1978, there were 400. Today, that number is under 100. In Libya, oh, this one's thrilling. In Libya, there were 38,000 Jews to be living in Libya in 1948. 38,000, folks. That's not even a high number to start with, but 38,000 is what the number was believed to be. By the time we get to 2018, that number is 0. 0. Today, there is believed to be 2 to 5 that are there doing official work for the state of Israel. And our thought is they're there undercover, for lack of a better term. They're not there as a recorded, you would find them in a census, for lack of a better term. How about Morocco? Morocco, there were 265,000 Jews in Morocco. And we're talking, by the way, when we talk about Morocco, we are talking about Northwest Africa. Northwest Africa, about as north as it gets, to the west as it gets. Just above Western Sahara. 265,000 Jews are living in Morocco in 1948. By the time we get to today, that number is not even 500. Not even 500, folks. Syria, 30,000 Jews living in Syria. Today, there's believed to be 10. In Tunisia, 1948, there's 105,000 Jews living in Tunisia. Today, they believe that number is close to 200. Yemen, Aden, 63,000, folks. 63,000 Jews were living in the southern Arabian Peninsula. 63,000. Now, there's probably 3. And even then, that's a debated number. Think this through for a second, folks. 851,000 Jews are represented in the countries that I named. 851,000. Now that number is in the negative. How does that even work? I mean, just tell me how that even works. I'll tell you how it works. The amount of Jews that they started with in those countries cannot be accounted for in the places that they moved to, which means many of them likely died or were killed. That's the better way of putting it. So who's the genocidal? And is Israel really genocidal? Are they literally wiping out an ethnicity from a land? You have to be sick in the head to say that that's happening. You have to be deranged. You have to be cuckoo. I'm not just saying this from some sort of a favorable perspective where I'm trying to twist the numbers. This is real data, folks. This is real data. This is exactly what's being said. This is not like some fictitious number that I'm coming up with. I'm not making this up. This didn't come out of my rear. These are real numbers. And it's amazing when you go through the story of what happened. It's really, really interesting. Really interesting. And if you look at the history of the Jews, even in Egypt, the Jews built Egypt into the empire that it became in ancient Egypt. Jews have lived in Egypt since biblical times. Israelite tribes first moved to the land of Goshen during the time of Joseph that we read about in Genesis. You think about that whole idea. It's amazing when you consider people who actually say that the Jews have no right to lay claim on any of the land that they're in, when the Jews themselves were longer in their land than anybody else that we could think of outside of the ancient Egyptians. And what's really interesting is if you go to Egypt today and you talk to the average Egyptian, they all will speak the national language, which is Arabic. Many will speak English, but maybe 1/2 or 1/4 of 1% are actually familiar with the real ancient Egyptian language, which had nothing to do with Arabic and which predated any language being spoken of in that time or any place. Interesting, you think about that. Goes back even before the time of ancient Sumer. Isn't it funny how that all works? It's unique how things have changed. And you go by and you look at the story of all of these nations and what actually happened in all these nations and how they ended up where they ended up. Folks, there's a real story in all of this. And the story has nothing to do with the type of facts that she claims to be depicting. So this is very interesting to understand. And I really want people to strongly pay attention to the reality of what we're seeing here. Because this is unbelievable. All of this is unbelievable. None of this should be a surprise to anybody, by the way. I want everybody to know that. None of this should be anything that should shock anybody. And I don't know why people choose to believe liars that continue to tell the lies of the devil in this vein. Look what she goes on to say, and this is what's particularly disturbing, but this is how the devil works. Look at how she finishes this off. Because she's going to tell you where her real focus is. She's going to tell you what she cares about more than anybody else, which she doesn't. She doesn't understand what it means to raise a child. So she doesn't really understand what it means to have a vested interest in the life and the mind of a child. So look at what she says. This is interesting.
Is this news to anybody? White supremacy destroys for the sake of destruction.
I don't even think she can define white supremacy. What she calls white supremacy is anybody who does not sit in the same seat of ignorance that she sits in and speaks the same things. You're a white supremacist if you believe in math, because math is a function of white imperialism. You're a white supremacist if you believe in being punctual, because time is a function of white imperialism. That's how she thinks. That's the way she thinks. Quite frankly, I'm not angry at her. My heart breaks for her. I did a video on her, and I told everybody pray for her because the enemy has ripped her off. She's not an ugly woman. She clearly is not somebody who's stupid. Yet the devil has ripped her off. You can see it. The devil has just completely ripped her to pieces. God could do so much with this woman. God could take this woman and start a real revolution against the powers of darkness. God could take a woman like this and use her in ways that she could never even begin to imagine. Yet the hatred that the enemy has caused her to be capitulated to will be the thing that will keep her from ever being blessed. And we have to pray that the Lord will get a hold of people like this, to turn them around and to get to think differently about the life that they're living. So look what she continues to say. And parents, I want you to pay special attention to what she says. Pay very special attention to what she says here. This is critical. Listen to what she says.
Abolition destroys for the sake of creation. We are not the same. I have an unwavering respect for children.
They destroy for the... Can we go back, and then we'll go back to what she says about children, because that's what I really want you to pay attention to, okay? We are not the same. She says, abolition destroys for the sake of creation. What are you seeking to abolish? And can you do me this one favor? Can you show me one thing that you've actually created? This is what leftists are characteristically good at doing. They are characteristically good at tearing things down, but they don't create anything. And the one thing that they're actually really good at creating are tools to destroy. This lady right here doesn't know what it's like to build something from the ground up. She has no idea. The Jews that she hates, they know everything about that. The Jews that she hates actually don't build from the ground up. They build from below the ground. You understand what they've had to do? What they've gone through to build the beautiful infrastructure that they've built? Folks, I have news for you. If you've read through the book of Numbers, then you will know immediately. You will know right away. I mean, immediately. What the book of Numbers says. The book of Numbers makes it very, very clear. Super clear. This isn't even a question in our minds. That the land of Israel was made to flourish only when Jews live in it. Does that mean that Arabs can't live in Israel? No. Does that mean that, any Gentile can't live in Israel? No. But if those people want to be blessed, then they'll let the Jews do what they were called by God to do, and that's dwell in the land that God gave them. When I'm in Israel, it's a personal experience I told you I would talk to you about. When I'm in Israel, if you were to blindfold me right now while I'm on a bus or I'm in a car, and you just take me on a tour through Israel, you don't tell me where we're going, you give me no indication of direction, you don't do, you literally blindfold me. You take my hearing away, so I can't listen for languages, nothing. And the only sense that I have is the sense of smell. I could tell you if I'm in a Palestinian city or if I'm in a Jewish city. Why? I go through a Jewish city, I'm smelling fresh air, bread being cooked. There's something about the air in the city that I'm in when it's a Jewish city. Any area that's Palestinian controlled, the first thing that I'm smelling is burning trash. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not trying to, for anybody that's going to sit here and accuse me of actually hating Arabs, you have to be crazy. My mom and my dad were both born and raised in Egypt. Not that I'm ever going to use an immutable characteristic to determine my moral authority. I don't believe in that level of insanity. But what I'm saying is, when the people of God are blessed, God blesses those that bless the people of God. It's that simple. So she's ripping herself off, but I want you to pay attention to what she says, because this is scary. If you are a parent, you should be concerned about this, especially if your children go to public school. And by the way, I'm telling you, children, we should not be sending our children to public school. I'm just telling you that right now. We should not be sending our children to public school. We shouldn't. We just shouldn't. Okay, listen to this.
Volition destroys for the sake of creation. We are not the same. I have an unwavering respect for children, an unwavering love and care and compassion for children, a commitment to children and to their freedom, to their learning, to their lives, to sustaining their lives.
Okay, let me just give you a translation for what that means. I am targeting your children. I desire to exploit your children for the purpose of communicating my ideals. I will take advantage of the vulnerability and weakness in your children, and I will go out of my way. I will go out of my way to make sure that your children do anything that they want without creating any boundaries, and I will have no regard to what happens after that. Think about that. For every one of her, there's another 100 or 200 or 1,000 or 2,000 that are looking to exploit your children. Wake up to these people. Wake up. They are choosing to let God curse them. Do not allow them to drag your children into that curse. She has allowed herself to be cursed because of what she's given herself to. And then let's just end with the last part of what she says. By the way, let me just remind you on this, okay? Those of us that walk with the Lord are always looking, because we've been taught to do this, to create a dialogue with people, to win them over, because we know what's at risk, right? We know their salvation is at stake, and we will always do everything that we can to bring them into the fold, because that's what God wants us to do. Look at her ideal. Let me tell you what she wants to do with anybody that disagrees with her. This is what she wants to see. So watch this, okay? This is what she says. This is her view. Look.
Y'all are the demons. Y'all are the villains. We've been trying to end y'all. Get free of y'all.
Y'all are the demons. Y'all are the villains. We're trying to get y'all, get rid of y'all. We're trying to free us of y'all. You understand what that means, right? It's highly inflammatory language. It's a type of language that says we want to eliminate you. We want to be done with you. And what you don't hear her say right after she says that is she says, and we're going to continue to do that. We are dedicated to the idea of eliminating you entirely from pretty much the face of the world. So we're going to exploit your children, and that's how we're going to do this. We are going to start this process of eliminating you by getting to your children and using them to aid you in allowing you to be destroyed. That's the way they think. This is the type of exploitation that we continue to see at every level. The kind of destruction that we see at every level. It is disgusting. So, my premise, going back to Zechariah, because I think this is an important discussion to have, right? My premise is to say that when you curse Israel, there's no way that you can expect God to bless you. It just isn't going to happen. And I'm going to prove evidence. I'm going to give you guys evidence of the fact. This is like legit evidence of the fact that the devil is good at causing people to be ignorant. Even ignorant of history. So even when questioned about history, okay, just understand how people will typically react and how little they actually know about these things. Here's a great example. Look at people here being questioned about what the Holocaust is. And I believe there's some language in here, so just please bear with us on this. But take a look at what's being said here, okay? Because this is literally in the depths of insanity, okay? Listen to this.
What is the Holocaust?
The what?
The Holocaust.
I don't know.
What is the Holocaust?
The who?
The Holocaust.
This some California stuff?
What group of people did the Nazis target?
Oh, why isn't it about Nazis? Kids.
Does that like break your heart? It's a reflection of the insane ignorance that the enemy has put in the minds and in the hearts of people. Think about this for a second. Like, how bad does it have to get before we realize we have a serious problem on our hands? If the devil can get people to not even know what happened in the Holocaust, or how about the ones that are calling from the river to the sea? Again, language on this one, okay? There's going to be some. But I want you to see this because this is going to effectively demonstrate the insanity of people. This will show you how good the devil is at deceiving people. Okay? Again, there's language here. The language is harsh. I get it. But we need to prove a point. So, if there's little ears around you, protect the little ears. But watch this. Tell me that this is not disturbing. Watch this.
From the river to the sea, Palestine needs to be free from the occupation, which is illegal.
What's the river?
I forgot the river's
the
name,
sea?
but the sea is the Red Sea.
So where is the river and the sea?
You believe that? He doesn't know what river, but he says the sea is the Red Sea. So they're calling out for the extermination of Jews from the river to the sea, which, by the way, we're talking about the Jordan and the Mediterranean. They don't even know. They have no idea. They don't even know what they're calling for. Listen to the rest of this. This is crazy, but watch.
Sea that everybody's chanting about.
I think it's the Black Sea and the river on the other side of Gaza.
Okay, so it's the Black Sea and the river on the other side of Gaza.
The Palestinian.
The Black Sea, which the Black Sea is far north, and the river on the other side of Gaza. Does she mean the Mediterranean? What is she talking about? You understand? Gaza is off the coast. It's the Mediterranean. It is on the west side of Israel. Okay? It's the eastern Mediterranean. So there's no real major river on the border of Gaza. You understand? They don't even know their geography. They have no idea what they're calling out for. Watch this. This is terrible. Watch this.
Genocide. It's just awful.
What about the hostages? Do you know about the hostages?
Unfortunately, I'm not that educated about that part.
The occupation is illegal. Even chocolate is not allowed. Wedding dresses are not allowed. It's been this way for over 15 years.
Okay, so chocolate's not allowed and wedding dresses are not allowed. Okay, so first of all, you understand that they were handing out chocolate to everybody when they found out the news about what happened to the Jews on October the 7th, okay? So that's not true. Wedding dresses are not allowed. Okay, if they weren't allowed, if chocolate wasn't allowed or wedding dresses were not allowed, would they not be allowed by Israel? Israel's not in Gaza. At least now they're in Gaza. But prior to October 7th, they weren't in Gaza. They had nothing to do with Gaza. So who's stopping wedding dresses and chocolate if that is the problem in your mind? It's Hamas. You see the ignorance here, folks, right? Oh, this is it's about to get really bad. Watch this.
It's a genocide. It's not about Hamas. It's not.
How is it not about Hamas?
It's not about Hamas. Isn't even there.
You understand that old lady just said it's not about Hamas and Hamas is not even there? You understand she just said that? Hamas is ruling. I don't have to educate you on this. You guys are a very enlightened audience. You know exactly what I'm talking about. None of us can help but to laugh, but it's also sad, isn't it? Look on. It's going to get worse.
Isn't where? Hamas isn't where?
Even Gaza.
Hamas is not in Gaza. The Jews are in Gaza.
The Jews.
Are there hostages in Gaza right now?
Oh, I don't know.
No, I got this from someone else.
Somebody gave it to you.
Yeah.
Do you know what it means?
No.
What are you demonstrating for or against?
Against the occupation of Palestine.
So support for the Black Sea to the other river to be liberated.
To be liberated from the occupation.
Does Israel have the right to exist at all?
I think the state of Israel should be dissolved.
So do you know what happened to women on October 7th?
By the way, can I say this? If Israel were to be dissolved, okay, I just want to make myself very, very clear. And these protesters went to go visit what they call Palestine, they wouldn't be alive. You understand that? I'm showing you this to show you how good the devil is at deceiving people. And please, believe me, I'm not exaggerating. Almost all protesters that are dealing with this issue right now are about as informed as these ones are. No joke. Continue on.
I've heard things. I've also heard that they're not confirmed.
Not confirmed. The rape incidences are not confirmed?
Not sure.
What about the hostages?
Fire no!
Are there any hostages?
Fire no!
Isn't that amazing? They don't even want to answer a simple question about hostages. And the ones that do answer the question about hostages, what do they say? Folks, do you believe this? Their answer is, I don't know. I'm really not informed on the issue. I really don't. I really don't understand what I'm talking about. I'm not really informed. I don't know. By the way, what do you expect? Their own leaders don't know. Their own leaders are not informed. The people that lead these protests don't even know. Can I play a 1-minute video? And I have acknowledged people as being smart when they're smart. This one isn't so smart. This lady isn't all that smart. But she is good at manipulating. She is a dark horse in many ways. Listen to this conversation she has about the, quote, occupation of Palestine, unquote. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Before she even gets elected in office. Listen to this.
But I am, of course, the dynamic there in terms of geopolitics and the war in the Middle East is very different than people expressing their First Amendment right to protest.
Well, yes, but I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition. And that to me is just where I tend to come from on this issue.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to
She doesn't even know what a settlement is. Listen to this. Listen to what she says. She realizes she can't talk herself out of this. Watch what she does.
Their housing and homes. Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also just, I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue.
Isn't that funny? She doesn't know what she's talking about and then falls back on, I am not an expert in geopolitics. When the subject that she's talking about isn't even what you would consider to be a geopolitical issue tied to the region. She's saying something because she's been brainwashed into saying it, and she is one of the chief propagators of this brainwashing. You understand that this woman right here, oh, her screen's not up anymore. And this woman that we just talked about, that you just watched, represents an overwhelming majority of the people that do this so-called activism. They don't know what they're talking about. But yet they continue to stand on these crazy, insane, out of control principles. Tell me, how much sense does that make? Does that even work? Does it even compute? We're getting to a place that's dark. I am going to play a video for you right now because I'm going to go somewhere with this. Right? And by the way, as I play this video for you, just know, understand this right now. Just understand that even the media has gone completely dark. And that sounds crazy when I say even the media, meaning it used to be that the media at least gave you an accurate depiction of the facts. This was 40 years ago. But now they're not even doing that. Now there is no depiction of anything that even remotely resembles the truth. It's all a lie. And they're actually at the point now where they are saying what they're being paid to basically say in propagating the lie that they're propagating. This will make you sick. And by the way, this is going to be a video that I'm going to do either Sunday or Monday. I'm going to actually expound upon why this video is so dangerous. But this is MSNBC, and they're talking about Ukraine's need for ammunition. Look at what they're going to say about people that, in essence, don't support giving more money to Ukraine to further the war. I'm going to go somewhere with this because all of this ties to Jerusalem. Every last bit of this ties to Jerusalem. We'll talk about this in just 1 second, okay? But let me play this for you because this is, again, this is insanity, but here we go. And this time I'm not even going to interrupt it. At least I'm going to try not to interrupt it. Here we go.
And the signals that we send are frightening. At the beginning of our support for Ukraine, Mika, there were people on the far, far left that would mock and ridicule the argument that China was watching. Mm-hmm. That if we didn't support Russia, if we didn't push back on Russia, if we didn't support Ukraine, that not only would Putin get that message and keep going into Ukraine and going to the Balkan states, but Xi would get the message and he would go into Taiwan. He wants to go into Taiwan. And if America lost its will to support people fighting for their own freedom, the message would be sent.
Okay, I do have to interrupt this because the context that they're bringing this into is it's just a lie. I just want you to get it. He is somehow going to make an argument that it's the fault of the United States of America if they don't give the Ukraine everything that they need. If they don't give Ukraine everything that they need, then somehow, some way, America is guilty of propagating a war that could be, in essence, I don't know what they think it is. End it? Put away? You understand, for every dollar that the United States of America gives to continue to further this, more lives are going to be lost, and Russia's still going to win. Like, you get that, right? Russia is still going to win. And I have zero desire to sit down and argue with anybody that says I'm pro-Putin. You're literally insane if you think that, because you don't know me and you have no idea what the facts are. But just listen to how they frame this. Listen to this.
The message that she is getting right now from little Mike Johnson and Donald Trump.
So they're talking about China, the leader of China, is getting a bad message from the Speaker of the House and Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump isn't the President of the United States. Even though Donald Trump isn't the President of the United States. And by the way, I can tell you this right now. If Donald Trump became the President of the United States again, he would literally end this war. I kid you not. I'm not exaggerating. He would end this war in probably 24 hours. Because what he would do is he would basically say, look, NATO, if you want to do this, you can go ahead and do it. Do it on your dime. Don't do it on America's dime. Oh, yeah, and by the way, if you do choose to do this and you want to expand no matter what, I'm not going to pay attention to Article 5. I will dissolve my commitment to NATO, and you could get your people out of here, because I'm not going to interfere and start or continue to add to a world war. Do you understand how quickly NATO would withdraw? Do you understand how quickly NATO would shut its mouth? Do you understand how fast things would stabilize? But we don't get it. See, my theory is Trump surrounded himself by guys that knew Bible prophecy, Jack Hibbs being one of them. That's my theory. Could be wrong. I don't think I am. Because if you allow Bible prophecy to influence your geopolitical stand, you'll be successful. No joke.
It's just devastating. And the message is this: Republicans, who for the past 50 years have been the main force to push back hard on communism, they've surrendered to the communists. They've surrendered. Mike Johnson surrendered to the communists, to the ex-communists, to the...
Do you understand, by the way, that this guy who claims to be an educated newsman just actually referred to Russia as a communist country? Like, it would make sense if he called China a communist country. It would make sense if he referred to North Korea as a communist country. It'd make a lot of sense if he talked about Venezuela, potentially, if he talked about Cuba. Wasn't the promise to not expand NATO predicated upon the destruction of the USSR, which means an end of communism to the region? Isn't that what the case is? And by the way, if there's two leaders in the region that act like communists more than any other leaders, it's going to be Zelensky and Putin. Tell me I'm wrong. Yet you say that we're fighting for freedom with Zelensky. Look, my point behind this is what all of these people have in common is they have their hatred for Israel in common. That's what they have in common. Why should they be surprised? Why should we be surprised when the country isn't being blessed? Right? Let me go over this news item. There's a couple that I said I wanted to go over because they relate to everything we're talking about here. Okay? Biden regime is announcing new round of Russian sanctions. President Biden said the White House will unveil new sanctions against the Russian government and Russian President Vladimir Putin after opposition leader Alexei Navalny died in prison. Now, it's very likely that Putin killed him, okay? I mean, let's not, mince words here. He's probably the one that killed him. We know that, right? But why are we getting involved in this? National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the new sanctions will target Russia's defense industrial base and sources of revenue that fund Russia's war in Ukraine. By the way, I don't know if you've been watching the tension going on between Jake Sullivan and the current press secretary, the White House. She's starting to make it a race thing and a anti-LGBTQ thing and all that nonsense. The president is beginning to put more trust in Jake Sullivan to run the press briefings than his brilliant little press secretary. And I'm being sarcastic when I say brilliant little. Well, she's little, but she's not brilliant. Okay, let me just make myself very clear. It is highly, highly improbable that any new sanctions are going to pressure Russia to end the war in Ukraine, especially considering the fact that Russia's economy has flourished, has gotten better since the last round of sanctions. The next target of these sanctions, believe it or not, is going to end up being China. And we are going to do to the Chinese the same things that we did to ourselves when this whole thing with Russia happened. Why are we sanctioning China in this new round of sanctions? Because that's what it is. It's an indirect sanction while they're getting ready to create an incursionary mechanism on Taiwan. It's absolutely crazy. You're going to sanction China by proxy through what you do with Putin, when in reality what that means you're going to do is empower China. Why? Because the president is in China's pocket. Very, very unlikely that any kind of sanctions would be more effective on China. And I promise you that the U.S. economy is going to struggle as a result of it. Why? Because we are hungry on Chinese product. We rely on China for everything, including medicine, which the former president of the United States was trying to do what he could to break that dependency. How about the Biden administration also wanting to make permanent regulations before Trump possibly wins? Let me read this to you. League of Conservation Voters Legislative Director Matthew Davis said the Biden regime is very focused on finalizing new environmental rules like the Clean Power Plan 2.0 to insulate them from a reachback if Donald Trump wins the 2024 election. The OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, said it is on track to finish a regulation that would protect civil service employees from future attempts by the Trump administration to re-implement Schedule F, a civil service classification that would make federal employees at will. Why does he want to make federal employees at will? Because we're wasting a lot of money on federal employees who aren't doing anything. As a matter of fact, in many cases, they're actually damaging lives. The reason why this is an important issue for us to be considering is because what the Biden regime is trying to do is make permanent all the damage that they're doing in this country, and using the mechanism of the law, trying to make it impossible to overturn in a 4-year period by the next president. We understand how much that could damage the country. They don't care. They hate Israel. What do you expect? If you hate Israel, do you think for 1 second God's going to bless you? God's not going to bless you, right? How do you like the fact, by the way, that Nikki Haley is actually telling the GOP that she is not going to walk away from the GOP until Super Tuesday on March the 5th, even though she's already lost? I think that she's working for the Democrats. That's what I think. She's trying to sabotage the Democrats. He's beating her by 30 points in Carolina. And South Carolina is her own. Boy, the North Carolinians would kill me if they heard me refer to South Carolina as Carolina. Woo, they'd be mad, be real mad at me. He's ahead of Nikki Haley by 30 points, and South Carolina's Nikki Haley's home territory. Come on, guys. How about this? There is a widespread expectation by most Americans that there's going to be violence at or around or after the 2024 election, presidential election. Why is that a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because with a higher expectation of that type of violence, it will change the way things are handled. I'm not going to get in any more other than to say it's crazy, right? I don't even have the time to get into what the Biden regime is doing right now with respect to their lawyers and what's happening with a lot of the election disputes that are going on right now. But how about this? The Philippines has come out and said that China is poisoning all of their fish, which is probably true. There's probably something like that going on, right? There's an international positioning that's happening right now, which is a very important thing to pay attention to, right? Where the United States Security Council resolution is demanding a total ceasefire in Gaza in favor of submitting its own ceasefire resolution. Think about that for just 1 second. Think about that for a second. Did I say United States? It's the United Nations. I don't know why I said United States. And by the way, the United States vetoed that. Thank God. I don't know how long they're going to veto it. But guys, this is such a big deal. Look, Jerusalem has some big decisions to make right now because they have to go into Rafah to finish the problem with Hamas. If they don't go into Rafah, then every bit of effort that they have put in eliminating Hamas is going to be gone. Egypt wants them to go into Rafah. Whether or not they want to admit it, or whether or not they're going to admit it, Saudi Arabia wants them to go into Rafah. Jordan wants them to go into Rafah. Jordan wants Israel to finish what they tried to finish in 1979 before the war in Lebanon. India is at risk with this. Indonesia is at risk with this because of the trade route problem. All of the nations along the Red Sea understands the potential problem of this. And the new economic model that the world is creating as a result of the modified position that's being had geopolitically in the Middle East has such a destabilizing effect that people don't have any idea. Look, when I read in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, that God will bless those that bless Israel and curse those that curse Israel, I'm seeing it happening right now on the geopolitical front. As I'm looking at all of this, I am watching it. Literally, guys, with my own eyes, I'm observing it happening. If you curse Israel, you yourself are positioned for being cursed. And if you bless Israel, you yourself are in position to be blessed. It's that simple. All right. I have gone too long. I've gone an hour and 15 minutes. We are going to jump on locals right now, and we are going to have an open conversation. Anybody that wants to jump in can jump in. If you're not a member on locals, you can be a member for free. I'm not going to close it to supporters only, at least for this one time. And I do appreciate the help that you guys have given us on locals. It's always a blessing to have you guys coming in and supporting. We've got some new extras that we're going to be putting together for you because we will be going through a new app very soon. We're very excited about that. All of you guys that have supported me on locals will get a great benefit with that. You'll be the first in, which is pretty exciting, right? This is a really, 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 really important time for us to be focusing on what's going on around us. By the way, with respect to locals, I just want to say this. Right now, until I think another week, you can type in New Year 24, New Year 24, and get yourself a big discount on locals. Again, all of it goes to supporting my family directly. So we thank you guys for that. We're running out of time, folks. We got to get involved. The world is changing around us. We're going to head over there right now, have a conversation. Family conversation should be fun. We're just going to have a little back and forth, spend some time talking. I think we'll have a lot of fun there. So I do have it already in the chat. I've got it posted for you guys. You guys should have it right there. So jump on. We'll see you guys over there. Let's close in prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for this time. Thank you for your goodness and your faithfulness, Lord. Thank you for all that you've done for us, Lord. Keep us always, Lord, looking to you. We love you, God, and thank you. And we just ask these things now. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, you guys. See you on locals. Love you guys. God bless you.